one's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant devotional service of the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lusts and avarice are diminished. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of asamsayam samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, verses 17 to 21. So this is an explanation of what is Krishna consciousness. And on the day of Balaram Jayanti, we should try and understand what is Krishna consciousness, what is the process, and how we become Krishna conscious. Because Balaram is the original spiritual master of all living entities. And today we're going to hear about Lord Balaram from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, 1st Canto, Adi Lila, verses 7 to 11. And then the Adi Lila, chapter 5, also. So, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, verse number 7, Balaram is mentioned. And he said, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes, Sankarsana Karana Toya Sai Garboda Sai Cha Prabodhi Sai Shesha Cha Yasyamsa Kala Sanitya Nandakya Ramaha Saranam Mamastu. May Sri Nityananda Rai be the object of my constant remembrance. Sankarsan, Seshanaga, and the Vishnus who lie on the Karana ocean, Garbha ocean, and ocean of milk are his plenary portions and the portions of his plenary portions. So why is it talking about Lord Nityananda Rai? Because Lord Nityananda is the expansion, or is non-different than Lord Balaram. Then it says, I surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Rama, who is known as Sankarsan in the midst of the Chaturvyuha, consisting of Vasudeva, Sankarsan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulences and resides in Vaikuntha Lokas, far beyond the material creation. So Krishna's first expansion is Balaram. And this Balaram appeared as Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya's intimate associate. Golokera Premadana, Harinama Sankirtana. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda descended in this world from the spiritual sky in order to spread the Harinam Sankirtan. So here we have Lord Krishna is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and actually combined incarnation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srimati Radharani, and Lord Nityananda is Balaram. So Krishna and Balaram appeared in this world in order to spread the Yuga Dharma, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And Balaram, being the first expansion of the Lord, is considered the elder brother of Krishna in the Gokula Dhamma, when Krishna appeared as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, and later on as the foster child of Nanda Maharaj and Yasoda Mai. Balaram appeared before him, and he seemed, Devaki seemed to have had a miscarriage in the seventh child, but it was actually Balaram who was transferred to the womb of Rohini, another wife of Vasudeva, who was living under the protection of Nanda Maharaj. And he appeared as Balaram. So Balaram is considered Krishna's elder brother. And when Krishna was present, Balaram became his elder brother. And also, when Lord Rama appeared, Balaram became Lord Rama's younger brother, Lakshmana. So here we have very interesting explanations. Balaram is a plenary expansion. A plenary expansion means complete expansion. There's no difference between Krishna and Balaram, except Balaram has a light complexion and Krishna has a dark complexion, but they are the same person, expanded. And Krishna expands himself in many forms that are not separate from one another. They're all plenary expansions. So this is the meaning of Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. The Absolute Truth is simultaneously and inconceivably one and different. So Krishna is claimed through all the Shastras to be the original personality of Godhead, and that he has innumerable avatars or incarnations. So after Krishna comes Balarama. After Balarama is Sankarsana, then Aniruddha, then Pradumna, then Narayana, then the different Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. All of them are avatars. And Lord Brahma is born from the lotus flower of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and he's an expansion, which is an expansion of Balaram. So Lord Krishna is not an incarnation of the Purusha, but is directly the original personality of Godhead. So therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 6th verse, it says that Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san pakritin swamadistaya sambhavami atmavayavya. So this when Krishna appears, he is not an expansion of Narayana or Vishnu. He is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is explained, as I said, in the 4th chapter, 6th verse, where it says that although, Krishna says to Arjuna, although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So, if we understand the very special peculiarity of Krishna's appearance, although he may appear like an ordinary person, but still he can remember all his previous appearances, whereas a common man cannot. And if you ask a common person, what did you do yesterday at the same hour as now? They would probably might not be sure what they did, right? But Krishna can remember all his appearances, and that's one difference between the jivas and the Supreme Lord. And he explained that in the previous verse, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam veta parantapa. The personality of God had said, O Arjuna, many, many births, both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. So, to understand Krishna and his expansions is a great science, and it requires a lot of, let's say, chanting Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, because that Chetodarpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadevagni Navapana, it purifies all the nonsense that we have learned by listening to the news, watching movies, talking to mundane people, reading novels and things like that. So much nonsense has entered into our mind and our ears, and to purify all that rust on our consciousness, we need to chant a lot. And by chanting and associating with devotees and hearing regularly Bhagavad Darshan or classes, we begin to develop the ability to understand this great science of Krishna and his expansions. So a plenary expansion is something that's absolute. There's no difference between it and the original personality Godhead from which everything is expanding. So Lord Krishna and Baladeva, or Balarama, are not two different personalities of Godhead. God, or Krishna, is one, without a second. But he's able to expand himself into many forms that are not separate from one another. They are all plenary expansions. Now somebody say, well, wait a minute, that sounds like nonsense. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? Because we can't do it. But that doesn't mean he can't do it. Just like a blind man, you ask him, you say to him, oh, the sun is shining very nicely today. He'll say, oh, I don't believe it. I say, why not? I can't see it. Well, does that mean the sun doesn't exist because he can't see it? That's not true. See, just because he can't see it doesn't mean the sun doesn't exist. And the same way, because we cannot emulate Krishna, who has mutually contradictory qualities. What does that mean? That means at the same time that he's very far away, he's the closest person to us. And at the same time, he doesn't have material legs. He can run faster than anyone with his spiritual legs. So these are called mutually contradictory qualities. It doesn't say material legs, spiritual legs. It just says, tad ejati, tad nejati, tad dure, tad vantike, tad antarasya sarvasya, tad dusarvasya prayataha. Although he's very far away, still he's very near, and he can run faster than anyone else. Right? So these mutually contradictory qualities is a obstacle for people who want to understand everything with reason and logic and science. So reason, logic, and science does not accommodate mutually contradictory qualities. They can't deal with it. It doesn't make sense to them. It's not logical. Why? Because their logic is the logic of the frog in the well. The frog in the well cannot imagine how big the Pacific Ocean it is. He can only measure it in terms of his own limited body. In the same way, the frog in the well scientists and philosophers and rationalists and empiricists, they can accommodate Krishna's mutually contradictory qualities. Like, for example, take the example of Lord Ramachandra who meets Parasuram. They're both incarnations of Krishna, appearing at the same time. Right? Add into the mix Vyasadeva and other great personalities. They are all also expansions of Krishna. You say. So how can you have one person who's expanded into so many different personalities? It doesn't make sense. It's not logical to the empiricists or the rationalists. But yet, it's a fact. How do we accommodate these mutually contradictory qualities and simultaneous oneness and difference? Because Krishna has infinite powers. If we do not accept that Krishna has infinite powers, we remain an atheist. We remain incredulous in front of Krishna and his pastimes. So therefore, the first thing that we must accept is that Krishna has infinite powers, and we cannot emulate them. That's the beginning of spiritual life. Because if we want to be a frog in the well, we'll say, well, no, he can't be like that because I'm not like that, therefore he can't be like that. That's called the false ego. To destroy that false ego, we must accept that Krishna is greater than the greatest. He's bigger than the biggest and smaller than the smallest. How do we know that? Well, let's look at the 8th chapter, 3rd verse, where it says that it says that Krishna is the soul of the jiva. Now, how big is the jiva's soul? How big is the jiva's soul? Wrong. Yeah, 1/10,000th right? And Krishna is smaller than that. Now, 1/10,000th of the tip of hair is smaller than an atom. Already we can't see an material atom, right? And Krishna is the soul of the soul. So he's even smaller than that. Therefore, we have a problem here. The problem is, how can you measure something that is so small? It's not possible. You say, well, because it's not possible does not mean it doesn't exist. It's just that we have limited senses. Okay, so that's the second thing you have to accept, that our senses are imperfect. We make mistakes. We're easily illusioned, and we have a cheating propensity. Therefore, it's impossible for us to understand something that is transcendental and beyond this material world and beyond the influence of the modes of material nature. Because all of us, because we have a material body, it's subject to the modes of material nature, subject to the influence of the modes of material nature. We're subject to the influence of time. We are subject to karma. We are prone to have lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, and madness, right? And we are always confused by the dualities of life: happiness and distress, riches and poverty, fame and infamy, love and hate, you see. So all these things are negatives that hold us back from understanding transcendental reality. And no one is free of them. The only way to become free of them is mam chayo vipacharina bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samitityaita brahma bhuyaya kalpate. We have to be engaged continually, day and night, in devotional service, and not fall down under any circumstance. Then we can rise above the influence of the three modes of material nature, rise above Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, na sochati na kankshati, rise above sochati and kankshati, which is lamentation and hankering. Then Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na sochati na kankshati. Samak sarve subhutesu. Then we also have to become samak sarve subhutesu, friendly to all living entities. They can be enemies, they can be friends, they can be tigers, they can be cockroaches. We have to be friendly to all living entities. So, na sochati, na kankshati, samak sarve subhutesu, mad bhaktim labhate param. Then we can attain to the stage of Brahma, or free from the influence of the three modes of material nature, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Only then can we begin to understand Krishna. Begin to understand something. That doesn't mean we understand everything, but we begin to understand. So therefore we see, this eliminates almost everybody in the world today. There are very few people that are actually in a state of Brahma Bhuta, or transcendental state. We have to accept all these hindrances or obstacles and understand there's only one way to overcome them. Bhaktya mam abhijananti yavanyaschasmi tatpata tatomam tatruto gyatva vishitetad anantaram. It's only by devotional service that is not subject to fruitive activities, or is not debased by fruitive activities, by material desires, and is not interrupted, that we can understand Krishna. See? This eliminates almost everybody. We have to realize that. Therefore, by realizing that, we have to develop the humility to actually surrender to Krishna through the disciplic succession, and especially our acharyas, especially Srila Prabhupada, and the immediate shiksha and diksha gurus. We have to surrender to them, realizing that on our own it's impossible for us to understand Krishna. So we're going to read now this transcendental knowledge of who Balaram is, can we say that we're going to be able to understand it? I would say no. No. But if we continue in devotional service and purify ourselves of all this filth of material attachment and mundane so-called love, which is only lust, then we can begin to understand and free ourselves of dualities. Just like Radharani, she's completely surrendered to Krishna. Once there was a demand that whoever is free of lust has to fetch some water for Krishna in a pot that has 1,000 holes, and if not one drop comes out of that pot while they're fetching water, then we know that that person is pure. Right? So Krishna asked that. So all the gopis, including Radharani, were hesitant because they're all married, the older gopis, and they're running to Krishna in the middle of the night, leaving their husbands and their kids, right? So they all hesitated. But there was one older devotee named Jyotila, and she said, I'll show you. She said, because she would not run to Krishna in the middle of the night, right? She's an older lady. So she goes, fills the pot with water, and when she comes back, there's not one drop left in it. So then Radharani said, I'll get it. She said, I'm not, I don't think I'll be able to come back with even one drop. But I will do it because I only want to please Krishna. So she goes and comes back, not one drop came out of the pot, although it had 1,000 holes. Right? That means that her desire was purely to please Krishna. She had no other desire in her heart. Right? It's not like us who say, "Oh, Krishna, please, my business is not doing good. Please let me get the little, better business, and I'm going to have an operation, and please let that operation be good." And we're always, please Krishna, right? Not that we're pleasing Krishna, but please Krishna, give me this or that, and I'm chanting Hare Krishna for you. That is not devotional service. See? Na danam, na janam, na sundaram, kavitam va jagadisha kamaye. Mama janmani janmanishware, bhavatat bhaktira haitaki tvaye. So, a devotee is not interested in wealth or accumulating wealth. He's not interested in having any honor or being especially honored for the service that they do. Najanam, he's not interested in having disciples, not interested in having victims for his sense gratification. And Najanam, Nasundarim, meaning victims for sense gratification. The only thing the devotee is interested in is serving Krishna birth after birth, meaning they don't want liberation. So there's no karma, there's no jnana, and there's no yoga. It's just bhakti. Karma, jnana, and yoga are also impediments on the path of devotional service. If one becomes a karma yogi because they want to be elevated to swarga, the next life. In other words, they're engaged in devotional service type activities, but the purpose is they want to have a better sense gratification in the next life. And that is not devotion. Or if one is interested in jnana, learning all those slokas and learning all the scriptures and being able to recite so many slokas and being able to get into philosophical arguments, citing this scripture, that scripture, and so forth, or trying to attain mukti by understanding neti, the absolute truth is not this and not that, and using nyaya logic and so forth. That's not devotional service. Or one becomes a mystic yoga and develops the 8 mystical perfections like Durvasa Muni. That is also not devotional service. Devotional service like Ambarish Maharaj, completely dependent on the Lord, no false ego, and engaged always in the service of the Lord. Just like it says, he was always going to the temple, massaging the deity, bowing down to the deity, and so forth. Engaged all the time in Krishna's service, that is real devotional service, without any personal motive. Right? Savai pumsa paro dharmo yato bhakti rahuksije ahaitiki pratihata yayat masuprasidati. That paro dharma, the superior dharma, or the supreme dharma, is engaging without any material desire and without any vacation. There's no, let's go to Wild Waves today, or let's go to Disneyland next week, or let's go to Cancun. You know, there's no question of a vacation in devotional service. It's 24 hours a day, 365 days, and 366 on the leap year. So that's devotional service, right? Then one can claim, well, I don't know the claim, but then one can experience that they are rising above the influence of lust, anger, greed, of sattva, rajas, and tamas, and they're beginning to understand something. So we're going to try and understand something. So here it says, Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. After Krishna comes Balaram. After Balaram is Sankarsan. Then Aniruddha Pradyumna. Then Narayana. Then the Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, Garbhasakshay Vishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu. And Krishna is not an incarnation of the Purusha. He is not an incarnation coming from Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Right? All incarnations come through Kshirodakshay Vishnu, who's an expansion of Balaram. But Krishna is not that. He's the original personality of Godhead, as we read the 4th chapter, 6th verse, Ajopi Imam Abhyatma of Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna expands his personal forms in two ways, Prakasa and Vilasa. So what are these? The Prakasa forms of Lord Krishna are for his pastimes. And their features are exactly like him. So when he's doing the Rasa Lila dance and he's in between each two gopis dancing, and each gopi thinks he's dancing only with her, that's a Prakasa form. There is no difference between Krishna's original form and the Prakasa forms. It's the same Krishna, the same form. There's no bodily differences, etc. The features are exactly like his. So when Krishna married 16,000 wives in Dwarka, it was the same Krishna with each wife. He didn't have a different hue. He didn't have different anything. It was the same Krishna. And Narada Muni saw this and he was amazed. Even he was bewildered by it. He's with different wives in different palaces, and there's over 16,000 of them, right? And he has different set of kids, and he's doing something different, but it's the same Krishna simultaneously. Can anyone emulate that? A yogi, a perfect yogi, mystic yogi, is able to expand himself 8 times, but each one is doing the same thing, although he's expanded. But here Krishna is expanded over 16,000 times, and he's doing different things. He has different wives, different set of kids, and doing different things simultaneously. I mean, Narada Muni went and saw it. He couldn't believe it. He was just bewildered by it, see? So don't try to be an empiricist and try and try and hold Krishna a prisoner in our limited mind and senses. Don't try and do that. We must admit that he is greater than us. So this is the way to defeat the false ego. So when we actually admit that someone is greater than us, and if that someone is Krishna, the greatest of all, then we become actually humble. But until then, as long as we're fancying some thought that I might be greater than this one, or I might be greater than that one, or maybe I could do this better than Krishna, you see, we are still under the throes of the false ego. So these are called prakasa forms. And however, when the Lord manifests his vilasa forms for his pastimes, these are pastime expansions of the Lord, such as the 4-armed Narayana, or forms in Vaikuntha, or there's Balaram himself. Balaram is Krishna, but he has a light complexion, and Krishna has a dark complexion. And Narayana has 4 arms, but Krishna only has 2 arms. So there's slight differences, and these are for Krishna's pastimes. The bodily colors are different, or Narayana has 4 arms. And so these are called Vilasa Vigrahas. So we have Prakasa, expansion of Krishna, they're exactly the same. They're him. No difference. And then Vilasa forms that are slightly different because it's for his pastimes. Like, for example, when Krishna is on the chariot of Arjuna, driving the chariot for Arjuna, and Bhismadev comes to kill Arjuna, Krishna manifests his form as Narayana. And he has a chakra. He's going toward Bhisma to kill him. And Bhisma, his tendency is to worship Narayana. His worship Krishna in his Narayana form. That's just his rasa, right? So when Krishna wants to kill someone, he becomes Narayana. Because Krishna is holding the flute, he's not holding the chakra. Is it? And this is very, very hard for Sri Vaishnavas to understand. In fact, they don't want to accept any of this. Because they think Krishna is the expansion of Narayana. In fact, I had a long discussion with a very erudite Sri Vaishnava yesterday. And you see, even Ramanujacharya accepted that Krishna is the origin of Narayana. It's in the introduction to his Gita Bhasya. Yeah. But what's interesting is when the Sri Vaishnavas print the Gita Bhasya by Ramanujacharya, they always put in their own introduction, not Ramanuja's original introduction. So you'll see this introduction by Vedanta Desika, or this introduction by this great Vaishnava commentator, or that great Vaishnava. But they don't, usually they avoid Ramanuja's original introduction. He wrote his own introduction to his own book, right? So it's very interesting. Anyway, besides that, now Lord Balaram is always assisting Krishna in his pastimes, right? And therefore he also expands himself as as Narayana in Vaikuntha, and as Sheshanaga, and also as Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and also as the clothing that Krishna, anything that supports Krishna, like conch shells and other things, they're all expansions of Balaram's energy. So Ananta, or Shesha, is the power that sustains all the planets in the universe. Now this is very interesting because modern scientists and mathematicians have studied gravity. And there's 2 things that they have studied, right? Krishna has what? Parasya Shakti Vividaiva Suyate. He has infinite powers, right? But the scientists, the only things that they've studied are 2 powers in the universe: electromagnetism and gravity. And electromagnetism, they still haven't figured out completely. They know how to use it, but they haven't figured it out completely. And gravity, they think they've figured it out, right? But actually they don't understand it at all. Okay? Those are the only 2 energies that they know something about. There are many more energies, subtle energies in the universe. Like, for example, there's a difference between the mind and the brain. Most people think they're the same thing. They're not the same thing. The mind is very subtle energy, and the brain is a muscle. It's like a muscle, right? There's a major difference between the 2. That's why you can have out-of-body experiences. You can't, the mind doesn't go out of the body, right? If it goes out of the body, you're dead, right? But mind can go out of the body. It's very subtle. Intelligence is more subtle, and then the soul, of course, is even more. And then there's false ego, which is even more subtle. And then there's the soul, which is much more difficult to understand than even the false ego. By the way, how do you understand the false ego when it's false, right? It's not easy to understand because it's by nature it's false, right? Like, for example, if you have a misconception, but you've harbored that misconception your whole life, how can you understand that your misconception is false? It's very difficult. In fact, you know, like, for example, let's say someone's been eating meat their whole life and they're 80 years old, right? And you come along, Johnny, new devotee, and you say, "Oh, Grandma, you shouldn't eat meat. It's bad for your health." You say, "What are you talking about? You crazy fool? You wimpy little teenager? What do you mean I shouldn't eat meat? I've been eating meat my whole life. What's wrong with it? It's good." You see, they will not accept to give up that misconception, right? No matter how much evidence you present. Is that right, Prabhu? Have you had experience of this?
Not directly, but indirectly in other circumstances.
Yeah, well, I've had direct experience with family members that refuse to accept, you know. You ever have experience like that? Someone refuses to accept, to give up meat? Yeah. Huh? No, they're all vegetarians. Okay. You had that experience?
With colleagues I have, but they make fun.
Yeah, of course they make fun.
They make fun.
Yeah, yeah. You ever have that experience? You ever have that experience? Yeah? With family members? Yeah. Yeah, so it's difficult to understand the false ego because it's false. And if you've been harboring a false conception your whole life, it's almost impossible to give it up, right? So we see here that this concept of gravity that the scientists have is completely wrong. Lord Balaram, if you want to understand gravity, you have to understand Lord Balaram and his expansion is Sheshanaga. Now, how is Sheshanaga holding all the planets in the universe in perfect orbits? You say, that is a very subtle thing. Is it a mechanical, physical thing? Like, you know, he has all these different hoods and each one is holding a planet? Or is it in some other mysterious way? Well, Prabhupada gives an example. He says, you get a ping pong ball and you put it in like a closed area and then you shoot in heat. Right? What will a ping pong ball do with the radiating heat? Do you know? Ping pong balls are very light. Have you seen that experiment? Yeah. It'll go up into the air and be held, if it's a steady flow of energy, it'll be held up in the air. It's like mysterious, right, by the radiating heat. So Prabhupada gave that as one example. You know, obviously the sun, which is a reflection of Brahmajyoti, is the source of all energy in the universe, right? And the radiation of the sun is an incredible amount of energy. The earth doesn't even capture 1/billionth of the energy of the sun, right? Not even 1/billionth the energy of the sun. And that energy is propelling everything in the earth. You know, by photosynthesis, the plants capture the energy of the sun, turn it into glucose, and then glucose goes into the energy in glucose is stored in other more complicated molecules, and then it becomes compacted and becomes either gas or oil. When I say gas, like methane gas or propane gas, some kind of gas, you know, or else it becomes oil or it becomes coal. And these things are the sources of energy. You know, the coal, oil, gas, you know, they're sources of energy. Not simply gas for the car, but there's methane gas, there's propane gas, there are other gases. They're all sources of energy. It's all coming from the sun. You see? And the heat of the sun and the radiation coming from the sun is also holding up the planets in the universe in a very subtle way. But there's even more subtle things that it's hard to explain, how Sheshanaga is holding up all the planets in the universe. See? So this is Balaram. He is supporting Krishna's pastimes in every different way in the universe. So, since Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Absolute Truth, everything in relationship to Him is also on the same platform of Supreme Absolute Truth. The Lord's clothing, His bedding, His slippers, everything required as an ordinary necessity, all transformations of Shesha, or Vishnu, the expansion of Sri Baladev. Thus, the cloth and other paraphernalia of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are but other forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, this is mysterious, right? Now, we're putting clothes on the deities every day, and flowers, right? And offering food and decorations. Right? These are non-different than Krishna once they were offered to the Lord. Therefore, it comes back as prasad, right? What does it mean? It means the Lord has accepted it, and now it becomes His own mercy in the form of a flower or prasadam or garlands or jewelry or cloth. See, now we're beginning to understand a little bit why we accept those things as non-different than the Lord. They are non-different than the Lord, right? Because the expansion, once it's offered to the Lord, it's like an expansion of Lord Balaram, because Balaram is the support of all of Krishna's pastimes. So, in the Maha Mantra we have Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the word Rama refers to Balarama. And since Lord Nityananda is an expansion of Balarama, Rama also refers to Lord Nityananda, right? And thus Hare Krishna, Hare Rama addresses not only Krishna but also Balarama, and also Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Okay. Now we begin to see that there is a connectivity of everything to Krishna in some way, some mysterious way or other. It's not actually mysterious. It's just an expansion of His infinite energies. Nitya Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. He He's the supreme eternal amongst all eternals. But there's one difference. He's maintaining everyone else. We can't claim as an eternal. We are an eternal also. You're an eternal. We can't claim that we're maintaining everyone else. We're having a hard time just maintaining ourselves, right? But Krishna is the supreme eternal because He's maintaining everyone else. So there are some, Prabhupada says, there are also three Ramas, right? We just said Hari Rama refers to Lord Balarama, but now there are also three Ramas. There is Parasurama, also known as Jamadagni, and there's another Rama, Lord Ramachandra, and there's a third Rama, Lord Balarama, right? So these are some of the reasons why Lord Balarama is known as Sankarshan Balarama, or sometimes as Rama. In the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. People sometimes object when Rama is accepted as Balarama, right? Because most people think, well, Hari Rama, that means Lord Ramachandra, right? But because the devotees of Lord Rama may object, they should know that there's no difference between Balarama and Lord Rama. Okay, there's no difference between them. Srimad Bhagavatam clearly states that Balarama is also known as Rama, Rameti. Rama, Rama, Rameti, right? They say that in the Vishnu Sahasranam Stotram, right? Who is it referring to? Therefore, it's not artificial to speak of Lord Balarama as Lord Rama. If someone calls Lord Ramachandra by the vibration Harirama, or if he understands Ramachandra, he is quite right. He's also right. Similarly, if one says that Harirama means Shri Balarama, he's also right. Those who are aware of the Vishnu Tattva do not fight over all these details. See? So, if we really want to go deeply into this subject, we have to read the first canto, or first Adi Lila, chapter 1, and then chapter 5. Chapter 5 is all about whatever is in these 4 or 5 verses in the first chapter of Adi Lila is explained in depth in chapter 5, which is Nityananda Tattva, okay, or all about Lord Balaram. I surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Rama, who is known as Sankarsana in the midst of the Chaturvyuha, consisting of Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulences and resides in Vaikuntha Lokas, far beyond the material creation. I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Rama, whose partial representation, called Karanodakshai Vishnu, lying in the Karana ocean, is the original Purusha, the master of the illusory energy and the shelter of all the universes. I offer my full obeisances unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Rama, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakshai Vishnu. See, now we're talking about partial expansions. Balarama is a complete expansion, or plenary expansion. Now we're talking about partial expansions. Expansions of Balarama. That's why it's called partial expansion. And then there are partial expansions of Krishna, who are also expanded from Lord Balarama. I offer my full obeisance unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Rama, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakshai Vishnu. From the navel of Garbhodakshai Vishnu sprouts the lotus that is the birthplace of Brahma, the engineer of the universe. The stem of that lotus is the resting place of the multitude of planets. So the planets are inside the stem of the lotus flower, coming from the navel of Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and on the whorl of the flower at the top of that stem is Lord Brahma. The mental, call it mental creation of Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Okay. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Raya, whose secondary part is the Vishnu lying in the ocean of milk. That Karanodakshai Vishnu is the super soul of all living entities and the maintainer of all universes. Sheshanaga is his further subpart. So here we see Narayana, and then we see Karanodakshai Vishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, Shirodakshai Vishnu, are all expanded from, and Sankarsan in the Chaturvyuha, all expanded from Balaram. Right? And there's the first Chaturvyuha, then there's the second Chaturvyuha. Right? There's Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. This Sankarsan is Balaram. And then the second Chaturvyuha is expanded from the first Sankarsana and the first Chaturvyuha, and that's again expanded from Balaram. And then from the second Sankarsana and the second Chaturvyuha expanded the Narayana forms and the Vishnu forms. Okay? It's all coming from Krishna originally through Balaram. Okay, so now if we go to the 5th chapter of the Adi Lila, then it explains each of these things in full depth. I mean, fuller depth. You know, there's a lot more information, extremely a lot more information. And also, Prabhupada, and also Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and Srila Prabhupada purport explains how Sankaracharya skewed the understanding of the Chaturvyuha in order to make his explanation that everything's coming from the Brahman. See, the mechanics of how Sankaracharya misrepresented Vedanta is explained in the 5th chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's very deep, a 5th chapter and the 7th chapter. It's a very deep philosophical explanation. We don't have the time to go into it now, but we should definitely hear this. It's very interesting. The first time I read this, I thought Prabhupada was explaining, well, I didn't understand that Prabhupada was explaining Sankaracharya's misrepresentation of the Chaturvyuha. And I thought he was explaining the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. For many years, I was confused, right, about, you know, Krishna's Chaturvyuha expansions. Then, when I read it more carefully, I began to understand, wait a minute, he's explaining Sankaracharya's misrepresentations of it. I used to think that when it says Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, I thought that was Krishna consciousness philosophy. But actually, that is another one of Sankaracharya's misrepresentations of Vedanta philosophy. You know, you understand what that means? Jagat, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, you understand? What does it mean? Is that our philosophy? No. Yeah. But when I was a young devotee, I used to think that was our philosophy until, you know, my mind became unscrambled. Okay. So, in this 5th chapter, it says, the glories of Lord Nityananda Balarama. Okay. So, this is explaining in the Adi Lila, the 7th verse of the Adi Lila is explaining about Balaram, right? So the first 10 verses of the Adi Lila explains 10 tattvas, absolute, and call it transcendental truths. Then the rest of the Bhagavatam explains in depth those 10 verses, 10 first verses of the Adi Lila. You see, so it's a very structured way of writing. So anyway, in the glories of Lord Nityananda, it says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the fountainhead of all incarnations. Lord Balaram is his second body. Lord Shri Krishna, the Absolute Personality of Godhead, is the primeval Lord, the original form of Godhead. And his first expansion is Sri Balarama. The Personality of Godhead can expand himself in innumerable forms. The forms that have unlimited potency are called Swamsa, and the forms that have limited potencies, the living entities, are called Vibhinamsa. So, now there's another 2 terms here, Swamsa and Vibhinamsa. We already discussed Prakasha and Vilasa, right? Prakasha are expansions of Krishna that are absolute expansions of himself with no differences. It's the same Krishna. And then there's Vilasa, which are absolute expansions of Krishna but have little difference. So Balaram is light colored, Krishna is dark colored. Narayana has 4 arms, Krishna has 2 arms. Right? Now it explains that the forms that have unlimited potency are called Swamsa, and the forms that have limited potencies, such as the living entities, are called Vibhinamsa. So, everything is expanded from Krishna. Not only the incarnations, but also we are expanded from Krishna. But we are called Vibhinamsa because we have limited potencies. And the absolute expansions of Krishna, which includes plenary expansions, partial plenary expansions, and partial plenary expansions, have unlimited potencies or almost unlimited potencies, right? This is verse 5 of chapter 5 of Adi Lila. Verse 4, I'm sorry, and the purport. Now verse 5 says, these 2, meaning Krishna and Balarama, are one and the same identity. They differ only in form. Lord Balarama is the first bodily expansion of Krishna. It doesn't mean a material body, right? It's a spiritual body expansion. And he assists in Lord Krishna's transcendental pastimes. Balarama is a swamsa, expansion of the Lord, meaning he has unlimited potency like Krishna. He's not limited. By the way, Balarama is the only person who can dance with the gopis besides Krishna. Nobody else can dance with the gopis because he's non-different. Otherwise, the gopis would not have danced with him. Right? There was this one demon, gorilla, Dravida. He tried to dance with the gopis. He entered Vrindavan and tried to dance with the gopis. I mean, Goloka Vrindavan, right? And he was killed. I think he was killed by Balaram right away. You see, nobody can dance with the gopis. Only, except Krishna and its plenary expansion, Balaram. Balarama is a swamsa expansion of the Lord, and therefore there's no difference in potency between Krishna and Balaram. The only difference is in their bodily structure. As the first expansion of Godhead, Balaram is the chief deity among the first quadruple forms of first Chaturviya, and he is the foremost assistant of Sri Krishna in his transcendental activities. Therefore he appears as Nityananda, he appears as Lakshmana, and so forth. That original Lord Krishna appeared in Navadvipa as Lord Chaitanya, and Balarama appeared with him as Lord Nityananda. May Sri Nityananda Rama be the object of my constant remembrance, Sankarsana, Sesha, Naga, and the Vishnus, who lie on the Karana ocean, Garbha ocean, and ocean of milk, are his plenary expansions and portions of his plenary expansions. Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami has recorded this verse in his diary to offer his respectful obeisances to Lord Nityananda Prabhu. This verse also appears in the 7th of the first 14 verses of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yes, so that's the first 14 verses, not 10, that are fundamental for that begin the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the rest of it is expanded from those 14 verses. He himself, meaning Balarama, helps in the pastimes of Lord Krishna, and he does the work of creation in 4 other forms. 4 other forms is Sankarsan, Sesha, and the Vishnus. Okay. He executes the orders of Lord Krishna in the work of creation and in the forms of Lord Shesha. He serves Krishna in various ways. And the purport, this is verse 10 now. According to expert opinion, Balarama, as the chief of the original quadruple forms, is also the original Sankarsana. Balarama, the first expansion of Krishna, expands himself in 5 forms: Mahasankarsana, Karanadakshay Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Shirodakshay Vishnu, and Shesha. So now we have the 5 principal expansions: Mahasankarsan, Karanadakshay Vishnu or Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Shirodakshay Vishnu. Shirodakshay Vishnu is the source of all incarnations or avatars in the material world. And Shesha. These 5 plenary portions, plenary meaning absolute, there's no difference, are responsible for both the spiritual and material cosmic manifestations. In these 5 forms, Lord Balarama assists Lord Krishna in his activities. The first 4 of these forms are responsible for cosmic manifestations, whereas Shesha is responsible for personal service to the Lord. Shesha is called Ananta, or unlimited, because he assists the personality of Godhead in his unlimited expansions by performing an unlimited variety of services. Sri Balaram is the servitor Godhead who serves Lord Krishna in all affairs of existence and knowledge. Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who is the same servitor Godhead, Balarama, performs the same service to Lord Gauranga by constant association. So now, if we if we go quickly now to the Panchatattva, Panchatattva is made up of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar Prabhu, and Shivas Acharya. Okay, so Lord Chaitanya is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Nityananda is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna's first expansion, Balaram. Advaita Acharya is an incarnation of Mahavishnu. Okay. Gadadhar is Krishna's internal potency represented by Srimati Radharani. And Shivas is Krishna's pure devotee represented by Narada Muni. You cannot understand Krishna unless you accept the Panchatattva, because all 5 aspects is called Godhead. What is Godhead? That is the whole, let's call spectrum of God's expansions. Right. So you have Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You have Balaram, his first expansion, who's an absolute expansion, non-different than, only differs in color. Then you have Advaita Acharya, who's Mahavishnu. He's the source of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu and Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, and the 3 Vishnus are in charge of material creation and maintenance and destruction, right? And then Gadadhar is Srimati Radharani, Krishna's internal potency, and personified by her of love and devotion, of the Hiladini Shakti. So Krishna has 3 internal potencies, Samvid, Hiladini, and Sandini, or Satchit Ananda Vigraha, meaning eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Eternity is Sat, or Sandini. Bliss is Hiladini, or Chit. Ananda, and Sandini, which is Chit, or knowledge, transcendental knowledge. And all this is in Vigraha, in the form of Krishna. Okay? So he has these 3 internal energies, and then he has these other expanded energies, such as the material world, etc. Okay, so now it says, in all the forms, he tastes the transcendental bliss of serving Krishna, meaning Balarama in all these different forms. Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, and also the Sheshanaga, and of course Sankarsan, I forgot. Okay, so in all these forms he serves the Lord. That same Balarama is Lord Nityananda, the companion of Lord Gaurasundar, or Lord Chaitanya. I have explained the 7th verse in 4 subsequent verses. By these verses, all the world can know the truth about Lord Nityananda. I surrender unto the lotus feet of Shri Nityananda Rama, who is known as Sankarsan, in the midst of the Chaturvyuha, consisting of Vasudeva, Sankarsan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulences and resides in Vaikuntha Lokas, far beyond the material creation. Beyond the material nature lies the realm known as Paravyoma, the spiritual sky. Like Lord Krishna himself, it possesses all transcendental attributes, such as the 6 opulences. So now it's going to get into very deep philosophy, the rest of this chapter, where it'll talk about a lot of different transcendental truths or tattvas concerning Balaram tattva. One thing that's important is understanding what is the disease of the modern civilized man. Right? We're living in modern times, right? What is the fundamental disease of modern civilized man? And Prabhupada explains, it's his disbelief in everything in the revealed scriptures. Right? Now, we're hearing something about revealed scriptures here, right? So the disease of modern people is their disbelief in everything in the revealed scriptures. And this is because of humanistic philosophy being the basis of all modern education. In India, as well as in the United States and the whole Western world, and most of the Eastern world, if not all of it. Even India. What is modern humanistic philosophy? Modern humanistic philosophy absolutely rejects any belief in a supernatural being that some people call God. It relies only on science, reason, and logic for determining what the truth is. All modern education is based on this philosophy. You might realize it, you might not realize it. You send your kid to a public school. This is the philosophy underlying or at the basis of their whole educational system. Therefore, so many times I ask kids, I said, have you heard anything about God in your class? What do you think the answer is? No. Why? Because modern humanistic educational philosophy rejects, in a very violent way, belief in God or any supernatural being being the source of creation. You believe this? This is a fact. So you send your kid to these public schools, you're sending them to the slaughterhouse. Because they are going to instill this misconception into their mind. Like one time one of my kids came home. He said, "Dad, I'm confused." I said, "Why?" Well, the teacher said that there is I think it was about the sun. She said that the sun's energy is radiation of electromagnetic waves and things like that. And I raised my hand and I said, "No, it's the Brahmajyoti." And the teacher said, "What's that?" So it's the light coming from Krishna's body. And the teacher said, "Oh, that's your belief. That has nothing to do with science." And she came home and said, I'm confused. She said, "What's the truth here?" And I said, "Well, the truth is that, yeah, the sunlight is the reflected light of the Brahmajyoti." She said, "Well, then why doesn't the teacher say that?" I said, "Because the teacher is a demon. And they have a different philosophy of science, of education. They're educating you beginning with the premise that there is no God. There's only... And the only way you can know science is through, acquire knowledge is through science, reason, and logic." She said, "Well, how can they do that? How can they say there's no God?" I said, "Because they're demons." And she said, "Oh, now I understand what a demon is." So, what was Prahlad Maharaj taught? Did they teach? Was he taught that Vishnu is the source of all creation? No. What was his teacher? What was his teacher? Amarka, Sanda Amarka. What were they teaching him? They're teaching him, well, you don't have to tell the truth. You just have to say something that sounds like the truth in order to get your way. This is what they teach. This is what they were teaching. That's why Prahlad Maharaj refused to learn anything from his teachers, because it was all nonsense. All diplomacy, how to get your own way, right? You get your own way by not speaking the truth, but speaking something that sounds like the truth to the dumbbells in society, so that they follow your false logic. So he refused to accept that. Right? And what did his father do? His own father, he wanted to kill his son when he found out he's actually a devotee of Krishna. You see? So it's a dangerous thing in modern life to be an actual devotee, because people who know what humanistic philosophy is will immediately oppose you. Right? So most kids don't understand anything about this, right? And most parents don't understand anything about it. So, because very few people are actually educated properly. And they don't really teach you this stuff in school either. They don't want you to know. But if you look it up on Wikipedia, you'll see humanistic philosophy rejects the existence of God, and humanistic philosophy is the basis of all modern education. Okay, so then the disease of the modern civilization and modern civilized man, so-called civilized, it's actually a misnomer, they're actually uncivilized, is his disbelief of everything in the revealed scriptures. Just like parents, they send their kids 16 years to public schools, right? And then the kid grows up and it says, the parents say, well, it's Balaram Jayanti, you have to go to the temple. The kid says, I don't want to go. After having brought the kid to the temple for, in their earlier years, now they don't want to come. Why? Well, this is a true story. One parent who was bringing her kid regularly, or off and on, not regularly, but off and on. And then the kid graduated high school, and then she said, well, we have to go to the temple, you have to get a blessing. He said, I don't want to go. She said, why not? I said, I don't believe in God. Huh? Where did that come from? It came from humanistic philosophical basis of education in public schools. Right? And the disbelief of everything in the revealed scriptures, faithless non-believers cannot make progress in spiritual realization. For they cannot understand the spiritual potency. The small fruit of a banyan contains hundreds of seeds, and in each seed is the potency to produce another banyan tree, with the potency to produce millions more of such fruits. This law of nature is visible before us, right? People are seeing it. In any fruit there are seeds. The banyan fruit has hundreds of seeds, right? And there's hundreds and thousands of banyan fruit in the right season, right? And then each seed can produce another banyan tree with more. Hundreds of seeds in each fruit and hundreds and thousands of seeds, right? So there's this unbelievable potency in nature. And the banyan seed is no bigger than this. And that little seed will grow a gigantic banyan tree that just keeps, if you let it, it just keeps expanding. And you can't figure out where is the original root, where's the original trunk, because each branch grows downward and roots, that branch roots, and it becomes a trunk. You can't figure out. You go to Calcutta, there's one whole city block of Calcutta that's one banyan tree. But you can't figure out where it started from and where it's ending. And you get lost in it. It's a whole, the city blocks in Calcutta are very big. It was planned by the British. And a whole city block is one tree. Right? So Prabhupada is saying, he says, this law of nature is visible before us. What is the law of nature? Krishna's infinite potency that's expanding beyond the imagination of people, right? And it's visible before us, although how it works is beyond our understanding. This is but an insignificant example of the potency of Godhead. There are many similar phenomena that no scientist can explain. That's for sure. They talk about black holes. Can they explain what it is exactly? No. Do they know it actually exists? No, it's a theoretical construct in the fertile brain of people like Stephen Hawking and others. But what is actually a black hole? I'm going to tell you right now. It's Mahavishnu. Because it's something in which that expands all the energy of the material world and then it retracts it. What is that? It's Mahavishnu. Would they say it's Mahavishnu? Never. Because they're all demons. But if you read the description of a black hole, you understand they're talking about Mahavishnu. And it's a theoretical construct. They've never seen it. They've never gone into it. You can't go into it because you would die, right? And no one was around when it expanded. But theoretically, they think that such a thing exists. You know. Okay. Everything, Prabhupada continues, everything, in fact, is inconceivable. For the truth is revealed only to the proper persons. So, was Einstein able to complete his unified field theory? No. He was not able to. And he's the greatest scientist in modern times. By the way, Newton was just as great as Einstein. In fact, other people like Planck, also Max Planck and others, they're unparalleled scientists, right? But all they did was study two energies. And how many energies does Krishna have? Infinite energies, right? They only know about two energies, and both those energies they don't understand completely. They understand something about electromagnetism. They can work with it, you know, but they don't exactly understand what it is. And gravitational, they think they understand it. They speak as if they understand it completely, but they don't understand anything about gravitation, right? And they also admitted, Einstein also admitted, they didn't really understand gravitation, you know, but they rely on it. And Stephen Hawking says, originally it was a big bang, and due to the law of gravitation, everything happened. Well, in a sense, that's true. Due to Balaram, everything has happened. But he doesn't understand what the law of gravitation is, you see. Okay, so then it says, although there are varieties of personalities, from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, all of whom are living beings, their development of knowledge is different. Therefore, we have to gather knowledge from the right source. Indeed, in reality, we can get knowledge only from the Vedic sources. The four Vedas, with their supplementary Puranas, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and their corollaries, are all known as Smritis. All are authorized. Smritis means what's spoken about Krishna, right? By others, you know, by pure devotees. Like Ishopanishad is actually a pure devotee. All the Upanishads are persons who have spoken about Krishna, you see. By the way, everything is personal in the creation of Krishna. There's nothing is impersonal. Even Brahma Jyoti is not impersonal because it's coming from Krishna, who's a person. The Mayavadis wrongly say it's impersonal because they don't want to admit that it's coming from a person. And they say that everything personal is coming from the impersonal. And that everything personal is only an illusion. The only thing that is real is the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. You see how they turn everything upside down and then pervert it into something that is not true at all. Yeah. If we are at all to gather knowledge, we must gather it from these sources, meaning the four Vedas with their supplementary Puranas, and Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and their corollaries, the Upanishads, and so forth, and ultimately the Srimad Bhagavatam. Revealed knowledge may, in the beginning, be unbelievable because of our paradoxical desire to verify everything with our tiny brains. This is a very important statement. And you will see this. This is the disease of modern people. They'll say, oh, wait a minute. If we can't prove it exists through empirical scientific methods, then that's pure fantasy. What are empirical? Empirical means what you can perceive with the senses, either with the raw senses or with the senses enhanced with microscopes or telescopes or whatever. In other words, if we can't prove it exists with these empirical means, then it's pure fantasy. It's not fact for us. You know, it's your fantasy. So I have fantasies too. You can have fantasies, but it's not science. Now, that is complete nonsense. Science today, I mean, pure fantasy is theoretical physics. Theoretical physics is pure fantasy. It's Walt Disney with a new name. Now, why do I say that? Because Stephen Hawking was a theoretical physicist. And he's conjecturing, guessing that there is a quark, a black hole. And by the way, he changed his theory of black holes several times in his lifetime. Right? So, he's saying that there's something that spews out, and there was a big bang, and then from that big chunk that went bang and exploded, the law of gravity pulled everything together and eventually created life forms and things, and it's all going to be sucked up into this black hole. So, where did the chunk come from? Right? Where did the energy to blow it up come from? And what's this thing that's sucking it all back into a black hole? You see. So the rest of his life, he just made more fantasy things based on the chunk, the explosion, and the sucking back into some black hole in the universe. You see. That's all it is. It's science, pure science fiction, made to look real by mathematical formulations that you can't read anyway. Can you read? Do you understand mathematical formulas that they write? You can't figure it out. It's a specialized language that only a few people in the world can understand. Like there's this great mathematician called Whitehead, a British mathematician. He wrote a big book like this, all math formulas. Right? Have you ever seen it? Have you ever seen it? You can go to the library and find it. Right? And he wrote this almost 100 years ago. He was up there with Einstein and others, right? You look at it, there are very few people that can understand all those mathematical equations. And there are some people like Gödel and others, only his students are able to understand his mathematical equations. It's even a more specialized mathematical language that just a few people in the world can actually understand. So when you get into this type of highly specialized language, math is just a language, computer programming styles are just languages, right? You get into a select group of people, and it gets smaller and smaller when you get to these theoretical physicists. The number of people who can understand what they're actually talking about is very few. And when you actually look at it, it's broken down to a chunk, a mysterious source of energy, and there's this thing called a black hole that sucks it all up and destroys it. You see? And it's all mysterious, it's all theoretical, and it's fantasy. So revealed knowledge may in the beginning be unbelievable because of our paradoxical desire to verify everything with our tiny brains. But the speculative means of attaining knowledge is always imperfect. So the Stephen Hawking's and other people, scientists' way of understanding knowledge is imperfect. This humanistic way of understanding knowledge is imperfect. Simply using reason and logic and science is imperfect. The perfect knowledge propounded in the revealed scriptures is confirmed by the great acharyas who have left ample commentations upon them. None of these acharyas has disbelieved in the Shastras. One who disbelieves in the Shastras is an atheist, and we should not consult an atheist. So oftentimes devotees will consult atheists and take ideas from the atheists and then sort of blend that into the Vedic philosophy or try and connect it to the Vedic philosophy, right? And it's a big mistake. It's just like mixing oil and water, right? It never mixes, right? It just becomes a scum on the top, right? The oil is lighter than water, so it goes up to the top and it looks like a scum. A staunch believer in the Shastras, with all its diversities, is the right person from whom to gather real knowledge. Such knowledge may seem inconceivable in the beginning, but when put forward in the proper authority, by the proper authority, its meaning is revealed, and then one no longer has any doubts about it. So this is called the philosophy of knowledge. We just read it. This is the philosophy of knowledge that Prabhupada and the Acharyas are giving us. What seems inconceivable in the beginning, through a process of purification through devotional service, becomes understandable in the end. And which seems believable in the beginning, like, you know, there are quarks and there are black holes and there was a chunk and a big explosion. As time goes on, it's all going to be debunked by a new theoretical physicist with a new fantasy, right? That'll take another 100 years to figure out that it's junk. And then that'll be replaced by another new fantasy based on theoretical physics and mathematics that only a few people can read or understand. And then later on, that'll be debunked, you see. So it's just like, oh yes, you know, let's vote for the Democrats, they'll make everything good. Then after 8 years, the Democrats suck, you know, let's vote for the Republicans, then everything will be good. They're promising this, promising that. And then after 8 years, that sucks, you know, let's vote for the Democrats because they're promising this and promising that, and everything will be good. And then that sucks. And then all of a sudden, I'm not going to vote anymore. I give up. It's all fantasy, it's all lies, right? And you know, the number of people voting is going down because they just get disgusted until a new generation comes in, then they start voting again, and then it goes down, and eventually no more voting, just, you know, whatever happens, whoever's a dictator, let them take over. I give up trying to understand. Yeah. Okay, so are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Yes, go ahead. And then you're next. You're next. Go ahead.
There is a question from one of the DYS students. And the question is, in earlier yugas, the human beings were bigger and stronger and everything. And that's true for the... So
why is there no fossil evidence? Is that the question? How did I know?
well, somebody must have asked.
No. No, because they're taught in school that the process of evolution, the theory of the origin of species that Darwin wrote in his book, will be proved in the future by the fossil evidence. Right? Darwin said it in the future, and he said, I'm not going to live long enough. It's going to require more research. But the little research I did, I came up with this great theory that everyone's accepting now, right? And you will be able to verify it through fossil evidence. Have they found the fossil evidence? No. They haven't. So, but this is the nonsense that kids learn, and these are kids that grew up, right? And now they're in your DYS class. So they're saying, well, you know, if people were bigger and the civilization was more advanced, how come we don't see the fossil evidence? How come there's no, you know, archaeological proof of this more advanced society? You know? Well, because in the more advanced society, they did not try to make permanent things. Like, for example, pyramid is a structure that seems to be permanent. You know, it was built 3,500 years ago. Like today, you know, you build a new house, like probably we're going to have your house where. How long do you think that house is going to last? Is it going to last 3,500 years? No, even if it lasts 35 years, you're lucky, right? You see? So, but the Egyptians, they built something that's lasted 3,500 years or 4,000 years, right? So the assumption is the farther back you go, and if it was more advanced, then you would see these big structures, you know, like well, whatever. Like, you say Dwarka exists, right? So you should see the structures of it. But when you go back into Satya Yuga, no one built any permanent structures because they understood that life on this earth is impermanent. And they lived the real ecological life, mud huts, or cow dung huts with thatched roof. Even if that's already opulent. Like Gautam Muni, one time Narada Muni saw him and he said, Gautam Muni, he said, why don't you take a break? He had received this benediction that looked like a curse, that he would always chant, the holy name. And Narada Muni said, but you don't even have a hut. He said, why don't you take a little break and build yourself a hut, protect yourself from the rain and the elements. And he quickly said, no. He said, I don't want to even stop for a second chanting the holy name. This was the nature of the sages in Satya Yuga. They were not interested in building something permanent because they knew that life is impermanent. They didn't want to divert their mind from Krishna consciousness to body consciousness, right? And because they were so pure, all the conditions in Satya Yuga supported them. Just like today, we could bring about the pacification of nature. Nature is going wild now, right? You have hurricanes, you have volcanoes exploding, all right? So many things are happening, right? And you have fires. The biggest fire in the history of California is going on now, right? And they can't stop it. It's not going to stop for months, right? So why is this happening? Well, because nature is going wild. Why? Because people are engaging more and more in sinful activities. And California is leading the way in sinful activities. They're the most advanced in sinful activities. So they have the most problems with nature. So, if that's a fact, if this is true, right, then what would be the way to bring about the pacification of nature? Any guess? What is it? Yeah, stop sinful activities and engage in devotional service. Then it would bring about the pacification of nature. Nature would start cooperating because nature is a person called Bhumi Devi. She's a devotee. You mistreat Bhumi Devi by mistreating Krishna, and then she holds back her opulences. You treat her nicely by treating Krishna nicely. Then she'll give you everything you need for making life easy. So if you read descriptions of Ram Raja, when Lord Rama was king in Ayodhya, nature cooperated with the people. No child died before the parents. In fact, nobody died while Lord Rama was around. And everything was easy because nature was cooperating. Right? And when King Yudhisthira was king, everything was easy. People were happy. Nature was cooperating because he was a pious devotee king. So, therefore, we cannot deny that there's a background organization of this universe, because it's functioning in mysterious ways beyond our understanding and doing a perfect job of it. It only gets messed up when we try and interfere with it. So therefore, as devotees, we should believe the revealed scriptures and not pay attention to this nonsense science and reason and logic. If you want to use your reason and logic, use it to understand how Lord Chaitanya is so merciful. Use your reason and logic to understand how he's so merciful. That's the proper use of reason and logic. But don't use reason and logic to disprove that God exists, because that's nonsense. Yeah. Okay, so they were taught that you're going to find fossil remains from the past, right? But you're not going to find fossil remains from Satya Yuga because they didn't build anything. They didn't waste their time building these gigantic so-called permanent edifices or buildings. They were only interested in practicing Krishna consciousness, and nature cooperated with them. Right? It's only when you go back down to Treta Yuga and Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, and then Kali Yuga, that you get into archaeological remains of things. Right? And the closer you come to us, the bigger and more permanent are the looking buildings, right? The things that they're finding. Okay, so what was your question, Prabhu? Sorry.
Thank you for reading about Krishna Tattva and Balaram Tattva, Prabhuji. And you mentioned about Vilasa form and Vaibhav form. So I just wanted to make sure that I heard you properly.
Yeah.
Balaram, you mentioned that he's Vilasa?
Vilasa.
Okay.
Okay, it's here. It's an introduction to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya by Prabhupada. It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also. So it says, when the Lord manifests his Vilasa expansions of Lord Krishna, and the four-handed Narayana forms in Vaikuntha expand from Balaram. There is no difference between the bodily forms of Sri Krishna and Balarama, except that their bodily colors are different. The bodily hue of Krishna is dark and that of Balarama is fair. Similarly, Sri Narayana in Vaikuntha has four hands, whereas Krishna has only two. The expansions of the Lord who manifest such bodily differences are known as Vilasa Vigrahas. Okay, so now, where is that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita? That's from Prabhupada's teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Now, where is that in the okay, so it's in the so Prabhupada full potency, so Adi 168. Okay, Adi Leela, first chapter, verses 68 to 78. So, first chapter 68 to 78 says, 68 says, huh? Yeah. All these incarnations, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, 67 says, all these incarnations are either plenary portions or parts of the plenary portions of the Purusha avatars. But Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In every age, he protects the world through his different features when the world is disturbed by the enemies of Indra. This statement of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.28 definitely negates the concept that Sri Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu or Narayana. Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, the supreme cause of all causes. This verse clearly indicates that incarnations of the personality of Godhead, such as Rama, Nishinga, Varaha, all undoubtedly belong to the Vishnu group, but all of them are either plenary portions or portions of plenary portions of the original personality of Godhead. Okay, then if we go to verse 97, his incarnations are of two kinds, namely partial and empowered. He appears in two ages, childhood and boyhood. Purport: the Vilasa forms are 6 in number. Incarnations are of two varieties, namely Shaktavesha, empowered, and Amsavesha, partial. These incarnations also come within the category of Prabhava and Vaibhava manifestations. Okay, wait a minute, that's not it. 1 second. This ID 16878 for Prabhava. Okay, 1 second. Let's look this up again.
So this Prabhava and Vilasa.
Vaibhava are different.
No, Vilasa and Prabhava, they are all explained to Rupa Goswami by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Oh, okay, you have it?
Yeah, it's part of teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 6.
Okay. You want to read it?
Yeah. So basically here it says that first he explains about the Vilasa forms, and then he says in his Vaibhava Prakasha feature, the Lord manifests himself as Balarama. Basically, he is not Vilasa, he is Prakasha. He is called Vaibhava Prakasha. The Balarama feature is good as Krishna himself, the only difference being that the bodily hue of Krishna is dark and that of Balaram is fair. The Vaibhava Prakasha form was also displayed when Krishna appeared before his mother Devaki in the 400 form of Narayana, just when he entered the world. At the request of his parents, however, he transformed himself to 200 form. Thus, he sometimes manifests 4 hands and sometimes 2. The 200 form is actually Vaibhava Prakasha and the 400 form is Prabhava Prakasha. In his personal form, Krishna is just like a cowherd boy, and he thinks of himself in that way. But when he is in the Vasudeva form, he thinks of himself as the son of Kshatriya and acts as a princely administrator.
Okay, read the beginning again.
In his Vaibhava Prakasha feature, the Lord manifests himself as Balarama.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Haribo.
seriously. Okay?
Yeah.
Even if they don't sing, don't worship, just listen.
Yeah.
No, sing it very nicely. Actually, yeah, take a good pause. Yeah, the singer needs to come.
Yashomati Nandana. Yashomati Nandana Vrajavara Nagara Gokula Nakana. Gopi Paranadana Madana Manohara Kaliya Damana Vedana. Amala Harina Mamaya Vilasa. Vipina Purandara Navina Nagaramana. Vamsi Vadana Suvasa. Brajajana Palana Surakula Nashana. Nanda Godana Rakovala. Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara. Sundarananda Gopala. Never mind. Jamuna Tatachara Gopi Basana Hara. Rasa Rasika Kripa Moya. Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natavara. Bhakti Vinodashaya. Yashomati Nandana Vrajavara Nagara Gokula Ranjana Kana. Gopi Paranadana Madana Manohara. Kaliya Damana Vedana. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्तिवेदांत गोस्वामी महाराज श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस श्रीला भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की नामाचार्य श्रीला हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की श्री वृंदावन धाम की श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की श्री नवदीप मायापुर धाम की गंगा माई की जय यमुना माई की जय तुलसी देवी की जय भक्ति देवी की जय सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna. So now we'll finish up. The very interesting point was made by Madhavachandra Prabhu, and so now I'm going to read something very interesting. That is, in verse 168, Adi Lila 168, it said, the personality of Godhead exhibits himself in two kinds of forms, prakasa and vilasa. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Supreme Lord expands his personal forms in two primary categories. The prakasa forms are manifested by Lord Krishna for his pastimes, and their features are exactly like his. When Lord Krishna married 16,000 queens in Dwarka, he did so in 16,000 prakasa expansions. Similarly, during the rasa dance, he expanded himself in identical prakasa forms to dance beside each and every gopi simultaneously. When the Lord manifests his vilasa expansions, however, they are all somewhat different in their bodily features. Please keep quiet. Please keep quiet. Lord Balarama is the first vilasa expansion. Here's Prabhupada saying it. Lord Balarama is the first vilasa expansion of Lord Krishna, and the four-handed Narayana forms in Vaikuntha expand from Balarama. There is no difference between the bodily forms of Sri Krishna and Balarama, except that their bodily colors are different. Similarly, Sri Narayana in Vaikuntha has four hands, whereas Krishna has only two. The expansions of the Lord who manifest such bodily differences are known as Vilasa Vigrahas. So here Prabhupada says that when the Lord manifests his Vilasa expansions, however, they are all somewhat different in their bodily features. Lord Balarama is the first Vilasa expansion of Lord Krishna. Adi Lila 168. So what I said is correct. I was just repeating what Prabhupada said. Now, if you have something else to add to that, That's okay. But this is what... It's in the Chaitanya, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and it's here in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Well, Vaibhava Prakasha, it can be Vaibhava Prakasha, but here he's saying the first Vilasa. It doesn't mean he's not the first Vilasa incarnation, expansion. It doesn't mean he's not the first Vilasa expansion. If you read carefully what is so there's Vaibhava and Vaibhava Prakasha. That's okay. We'll discuss that separately. What I said was correct. I simply repeated what Prabhupada said. Okay. No, but the second question we will discuss a little bit later because it requires a little more understanding what is Prabhava and Vaibhava. When you understand that, then you can put it together. When you mix Prakasa with Vaibhava, then you can try and understand that better. But let's not go there right now. Let's just stick to what I said. What I said, I simply repeated what Prabhupada said. And there's the proof, 168. Time.